You want to be seen drinking? Not in it. Yeah. I just panicked so much.
Okay, I need some ketchup for my fries.
I'll go grab you a ketchup on it.
But thank you. Hey, Sharon. Listen, I know that's not the topic. But I had to have a hot fry while it was hot. Because I've been waiting all day to come here and order this tenderloin. Have I been thinking about the topic? No, not at all. Only about the tenderloin. But I'm sure I can tie that in. But I'd like to say welcome to our Indy Story Slam presented by Freetown Village and Storytelling Arts of Indiana and sponsored by Maestro Organizing and our media partner WFYI. Welcome. My name is Celestine Bloomfield and I'm here to keep it moving. I'm here to remind you of all those things you have buried deep, 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 deep down in the recesses of your mind, because when someone starts to tell a story, do you know what's going to happen? It's going to remind you of something that happened to you. Now, do not be shy. You may come on up and sign up. We've got slips. Samantha's back there. You will be put into a live green basket, and after that, we will pull your name and listen to the fantastic story you want to tell. Now, tonight's theme is mirror. I don't know what that means to you. Mirror, mirror, who's the fairest of them all? Me, always. I'm like the queen of that old folk tale. Oh, I thought Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. I tried to sing it, it didn't sound good. Will not be subjected to that. But I want you to know the rules of our slam because I will, being a retired educator, stop you so that you can get the full benefit of your 5 minutes of telling. And your story should be 5 minutes or less. If you talk longer than that, go right ahead. We will deduct points. And you really don't want that to happen because there are prizes. Your story should be a true story. But like I said, if we don't see your nose going, how will we know? Your story should be told in the first person. It should be based on the theme of mirror, whatever that means to you. You may not use any notes. Don't be picking up your phone, bringing it up here thinking you can use it, because I'll just take it. But I'd like to thank our 3 judges who are here now. We won't tell you who they are, but give them a round of applause. We want to thank Shannon for making me look good on camera.
Of course.
And for taking photographs. And we want to thank Samantha for taking care of all things related to the swing. Listen. Is Greg here? I keep looking for him. He won't come. He hasn't been here yet. I'm gonna have to call him in home and issue a special invitation. We don't want to harass him because he's one of our sponsors. But I need help. At any rate, before we draw names, I want you to know for February, our theme will be Déjà Vu. And we will be meeting at the Union Jack Pub at 921 Broadway Avenue. We've got a lot of events coming up. I'm trying to give everybody their plates, you know. People will stop walking in front of the camera. You know, let my fries chill off a little bit. But here are stories, the life and afterlife of incarceration in partnership with the Indianapolis Foundation, Trusted Mentors, and the Garden Community Church, will be held February 6th at 7:15 at Golden Hour Books at 5208 North College Avenue. People returning to our city after being incarcerated face many challenges. And they'll share firsthand stories about their lives inside prison and what it's like adjusting to life on the outside. Hope you can attend and hear these courageous stories that will change your perspective and motivate you to act. Now, the event is free, but if you feel so inclined, please make a donation. Text SAI to 44321 on your smartphone. Don't worry, I'll give you this number over and over and over and over again. But right now, I'm going to hang out and stop the commercials. I got a friend of mine. She would not stay at home. She would not go to bed, no matter what her mama and daddy said to her. She made them come out so that she could tell a story. I walked in, and the very first person I saw was JoJo. I know that's not her real name, that's her nickname. But JoJo Powell is our very first teller. JoJo, are you ready? Come on, girl.
Creation. And then we know the lighthouse Kelly for Valley. And then I put it on the mirror, but Daddy had it yet. It was gonna fall. And
You a story. You see what I'm talking about? Because I don't see a lot of names in this lime green basket I'm about to draw from. So you have plenty of time to think of a story. Maybe Jennifer reminded you of a story you wanted to tell. But right now, let me look in here. I love the people who fold their results. That's the first thing that I read. And our first storyteller is Chris Garrett. Come on down.
So when I thought of the topic mirror, it made me think of parents and children and how we can be mirrors to each other. I was 41 when I had my daughter, and so I had the opportunity to make a lot of my own mistakes and hopefully learn from them. But I really started thinking more about how to set a good example for her in terms of the kind of person that I would want her to become. And so when she was about maybe 3, I was putting on some makeup, and I never wore a lot of makeup, but I was putting on some makeup, and she said, "Mommy, why are you wearing makeup?" And I was thinking, so now what am I going to tell her? Am I going to tell her to make myself pretty? You know, and I actually for a number of years completely stopped wearing makeup because I didn't want to give her that kind of model. Also, in terms of the values that I was trying to teach her, I was raising her in the UU church, and one of the things that we did at home was I had a widow living next door, and so I would often help her with her yard work and shoveling and what have you. And you know, the kids can become the mirror too, reflecting back at us. One time I had just finished clearing my yard, and it was dark outside already, and I was getting ready to go inside and make dinner. And Miranda says, "What about Shirley's leaves?" And so I said, "Well, you know, Bill and Paula, my neighbors across the street, they help Shirley too, and they'll help her with her leaves." And she said, "Well, Mommy, we always help her with her leaves." And so we did. And there she was reflecting back to me the values that I was hoping to teach her, even in a time when it wasn't necessarily the most convenient for me. As she has grown up and I've gotten older, I also have reflected on how I use my parents as mirrors, sometimes for positive and sometimes not so positive. My mom was what would now be considered abusive to us kids in terms of corporal punishment and what have you, and was also a 2-pack-a-day smoker who died at the age of 63 from a massive stroke. And so, although I didn't think of it in terms of mirror, many times I thought about the ways that I did not want to be like my mom. On the other hand, my dad taught me a lot that I didn't necessarily realize at the time about being frugal so that I could be comfortable in retirement. How to live a long, happy retirement, doing the things that I've dreamed about doing, both in terms of having good health to be able to do it and being able to afford to do those things. He lived to almost 95. And in the end, when his health did start to fail, made the choice to die with dignity rather than to pursue extensive medical care that he would have required if he wanted to extend his life further. So those are some of the ways for me that I really have thought about, both as a parent and as a child, how we mirror back to each other ways to live a good life. And now, as I'm turning 70, and my daughter is engaged to a wonderful young man, I've told them both, if I had handpicked someone for her, I don't think I could have picked someone better than Ryan. It makes me think that maybe once again, she can be a mirror to me. I'm twice divorced. I made not the best choices in relationships, but maybe it's not too late find someone.
Thank you very much. Now listen, I know that got somebody's brain safe. And you started thinking about, oh yeah, I remember the time. Don't let it slide. Raise your hand and Samantha will give you a slip of paper with a pen. You can complete that and we will put it into this lime green basket. And maybe we will pull your name out and listen to your story about a miracle. Ah, we got another storyteller coming. Tamara Rogers. Come on down. Last year, I turned 50 years old. Thank you. And in turning 50 years old, I did a lot of reflecting. I started thinking about things that went well, things that didn't go well, things that made me happy, things that made me really sad. And someone asked me, what is it like being 50? And I said, well, it's really kind of like being a vintage car. Everything on the outside is an original, but inside has all been swapped out. And so I've had to come to terms with it, and I've had mixed feelings, to be honest. But one thing that gives me joy, and actually two things, are my twin boys. I have 16-year-old twins. My life was pretty good before I had them at advanced maternal age. That's what the doctors told me. And I was living my best life. And when they came, I learned how to increase my joy, my gratitude, and happiness. So anytime I'm around them, I feel better, not just about aging, but about life in general. I wake up typically before 6 a.m. almost every day of the week. One Saturday morning, I was hot, then I was cold. Then I was hot, then I was real cold. And so I could not sleep, and I decided to just get up and get some coffee. To go get my robe, I have to go through the bathroom to get it. I didn't want to disturb my husband. It was dark, it was cold. I made my way to the bathroom, and instantly, my heart started racing. I started sweating even more and trembling a little bit. I had just turned on the light and saw my reflection in the mirror without makeup, without all of my wonderful clothes. I terrified myself and I said, who is this woman staring at me at 6 a.m.? And then later in the day, I was around my sons. They had done great in school, and so I decided to take them shopping because they had great grades, and so we were going to go shopping in their favorite restaurant. And I thought my day is going to turn around right now because the two joys of my life are going to make me feel better. So we're in my car. When one is in the front seat, when two is in the back. And I say, son, have you heard this term called boomer? I think it has something to do with being like an old person, but mommy's not a boomer, right? Son one looked at me and he said, well, you are 50 years old. Oh boy, I thought this is going south fast. I mean, but mommy thought that 50 is like the new 30, right? My second son leaned up kind of from the back seat and said, who told you that, a boomer? Oh boy, this is really going down. This is the same day that I scared myself in the mirror, okay? I said, but do I look 50 now? Son one, who seems sympathetic. Mom, no, you don't. Son two interrupted him and said, but you're at half a century old. And you cannot remember things, Mom. You're not old like grandma and granddad, but you are getting up there. I think maybe you need some memory medicine. Oh boy, things are going fast. So I paused. I turned on the left turn signal, got into the left turn lane, and turned the car around and said, you know what? I forgot where we're going. We're going home. Maybe feel better. Aging is really humbling. Thank you. I thought I could jump up out of this walker, but it's not working for me today. Maybe tomorrow. Oh, I love being around kids because you know they will tell you the truth. They will not glaze it. Mm-mm. No frosting whatsoever. I remember as a kid, I'm the oldest of three. And I have brothers who like are maybe 18 months apart or maybe 2 years apart. But they look like twins, and my mother always dressed them the same, mirror images. And my mother would go to the store and she would give us directives, you know, back in the days when children listened to their parents, and told us not to go outside until she came back home from the grocery store. Now, my brothers were in their rooms playing. I was in the living room reading because I was an angelic child. And all of a sudden, my brother called and said, let's sing. That's what they called him because they couldn't say select. Come in here and play with us. And I put my book down. I laid it on the couch. And I got up and said, okay. And I popped into their room, shut the door. They grabbed me, threw me into the closet, closed the closet door, pushed the dresser against the closet door. We had a mirror stand up on it and went outside. Now, when I came to, I stood up and I was looking around and I went to go open the door and it wouldn't budge and I pushed it really hard and the door hit the mirror that was on the dresser and the dresser fell and the mirror fell and broke into 1,000 pieces just as my mother came through the front door. My mother is a kind, sweet soul, but she was pissed off that day. And I know I got in trouble for it, but no matter how many times I told her about those boys who had escaped, I think I was the only one that was punished. I'm still working on revenge to this very day. But I got a story about a mirror. That's my mirror story. That gives you a chance to think about the story you want to tell now. We got blank slips of paper. We got pen, pencil. We'll even write it in crayon if we have to. But right now, Christy Jordan is coming down to tell us a story.
Okay, so as soon as I heard or read that mirrors was the topic tonight, something popped into my head immediately. But it's a little deep. So that's pretty on brand for me. So I never really paid attention to the mirror until I didn't like what was staring back at me. I didn't really notice what was staring back at me until I hurt someone that I loved. And then I looked in the mirror and immediately recognized that internalized shame and spent several years avoiding downcast, even for a period of time in my past. I didn't want to look at myself. And it wasn't how I looked physically, but it was how I felt about myself on the inside. And then one day, my daughter, who was 9 years old at the time, asked me about it. And I thought, well, how do you explain something so deep? um, Just one who's still forming, for instance, that I didn't do. Uh, as I journaled about it, I realized that that was exactly my reason to take a look at it for myself. And once I started to actually look at myself in the mirror, I realized it wasn't just my behavior that I had to take a look at, but it's all the ways in which I was hurt. I grew up in a traumatic childhood, really violent household, and and instead of punishing myself, I had to reconcile with the little girl inside of me that did give me anything. She was told a narrative about why that was because she was worthy. Um, and it can be really hard to challenge that in yourself, especially when you've got people around us telling us to be differently. But I knew that I'd want my daughter to take a look at herself in the mirror one day when she had to reconcile with her own behaviors that might be hurtful to herself or someone else. And what I found was that anxiety filled the spaces of joy with them, and frustration filled the spaces for peace with them. And taking a look at those things allows you to intentionally replace them with things like roller skating and weight loss and poetry and journaling and laughter and relationships that feel really good and distant when the relationships don't feel good. So, you know, the mirror is a really valuable and important tool that I won't forget. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you so much. Listen, let me give you a little commercial. Why you having feedback there? You might want to know that on Saturday, February 8th at 7 p.m. at the Indiana Historical Society, we will have the Malaga ship, a story of Maine and the Middle Passage, told by Antonio Pasha, sponsored by Lewis and Wilkins. Now, the Malaga was a 183-ton brig built in Brunswick, Maine in 1832 in a shipyard owned by Joseph Badger. And it didn't take long for the ship to become part of the illegal transatlantic trade of African captives to the Americas. Yeah, another slip. Developed by an artist in residence in Portland, Maine, Antonio Pasha tells the story of the ship using his entire body and voice, singing, narrating, and miming his way through this poetic, historic tale. And the story vividly explores the reality and impact of the slave industry, which connects the Malaga ship to Rio de Janeiro, where Pasha was raised. So put that on your calendar. I'll remind you. You also want to know that Freetown Village Singers will be at St. James Episcopal Church in Vincennes, Indiana on Saturday, February 8th from 2 to 3 p.m. Hey, we got enough time to get this only an hour, right? We could get there and come on back in time to hear Antonio. The Black History Preservation Project of Knox County has invited the Freetown Village Singers to perform. So if the weather's good and the highway is clear, I suggest we all go. The Freetown Village Singers will also be at Ivy Tech Community College Tuesday, February 18th from 1 to 2 p.m. They will perform in room 438. Don't know what building that is. Okay, we'll find out. I got connections. At any rate, I was giving the judges enough time to do their work, I didn't want to rush them. I was giving you enough time to decide that you too had a story about mirrors that you wanted to tell. So Samantha, raise your hand, wave it in the air. She's got blank forms, you can fill it out. But right now we're going to listen to Mark to Matt.
Okay, this story starts in my late 20s. So my dad and I were in the car. We lived in Indianapolis. We were headed to Cleveland, Ohio. And all my hopes and dreams were in Cleveland, Ohio, which no one has ever said. You ever been to Cleveland, Ohio? It's a nice city, but no one's hopes and dreams are like resting in Cleveland, Ohio. We were headed to the Cleveland Clinic. I was in my late 20s and I had pretty much lost any functional, non-pain-free use of my right arm. And it had started to spread. And I had had multiple surgeries. I had been to physical therapy. I had been to occupational therapy, which, if you're not familiar, is like physical therapy, but in a chair. So they kind of like do physical therapy, but for how to do normal things, you can't use your hands. And my dad's hopes and dreams were there too, because he was watching me go through this. And we get to the doctor's office, and you go to the Cleveland Clinic, and it's a big, massive campus. We get in there, and there's a doctor that has big, massive vibes. Like they had the vibe, like this is clearly the smartest person in med school in my mind. Like they're at Cleveland Clinic. And the doctor looks at me and they said, the problem with your arms is in your head. And it's like, strike one, this is bad start. And then he said, and the way we're going to fix it is with a mirror. And I was like, strike 2 and 3. Like, we're done here. And he had me stand in front of the mirror. And it's very hard to kind of describe without the mirror. But basically, I took my right arm at his instruction and I looked in the mirror and it reflected my good arm. And so my bad arm, as my good arm was moving in the mirror, looked like my good arm. And he said, you've had the surgeries you need. Your arms are fine. What your brain and your body need to understand is that it's safe. And hindsight 2020, I'm like, that's pretty good advice. But at the time, I was like, I came to Cleveland Clinic and you asked me to pretend. Asked me to pretend and look in a mirror and pretend that I'm okay. And literally we drove back, and that was the longest drive I think I've ever been on. And it's a pretty long drive already. And it didn't really hit me until I had 2 children that are in the back, Jimmy and Theo. Shout out. Hiding under the table. The problem with the mirror therapy was it did work, but you can't sit in front of a mirror all the time. And so like it works for a couple minutes, and then you go back to traffic and bosses and all the stuff that causes problems. And what I have been so grateful, like my children, is the fact that they are little mirrors. They're little pretend machines. They pretend all the time. They reflect back in the most unique ways. And when I had those mirrors that could walk with me every day, and I could walk with them every day, slowly my brain started to realize, like, yes, the world can be different than the way we see it. And the last little moment that I'll never forget, I remember I was in a lot of pain one day, and Jenny, my daughter, she said to me, she said, Dad, how many people are in the world? And I have no idea. I remember like in 9th grade, they said like 6 billion, but I figured, we're doing our part to stay alive longer. There's probably a lot more. So I was like, you don't want to sound like you don't know. basic question. Your children sounds like, I think like 8 billion. And she looked at me and she said, does that 8 billion include you, me, and Theo? Or is that without us? And it was just this moment where I was like, children reflect such a beautiful way to look at the world. And slowly by slowly, that reflection of a different way to look at the world has changed my life by them being in it, but also has mirrored back a different reality that allowed me to live without me. Thank
Are they still hiding underneath the table? Hi, kids. Thank you. That was a great story. Listen. I know you're thinking about another story you want to tell. We got plenty of time because I've only taken 2 bites out of my tenderloin. In the meantime, our next story about mirrors or mirror, it was not plural. And I thought it was neat for you to add self-reflection. Because, really, what does a mirror do? That's what it does. But John Sherman, I need you to come on down and tell us your story.
Reflecting on yours, I won't tell you what I saw when I looked in the mirror. One reason I lost 40 pounds deliberately over the past 2 months. That's a scary me. Okay. I'm 80, not 50. Well, I know it has to be a true story, and it will be. Where's the timekeeper, first of all? So, there we go. Maybe. Oh, okay. Christmas, right. Okay. It's a true story, but it starts out by my looking in the mirror, but go along with me on this, and seeing George Orwell. Because at this time of year, on the farm, the sheep delivered the new sheep. And this very cold, bitter night reminds me so well of that's the very time of year that we had new land. I was curious. Not only did I first hate the sheep anyway, and George, I mentioned George because he got it right. And he would have said to me in that mirror, John, I got it right? The dumbest animals on the planet are sheep. And I could vouch for that. When I read the book and when I taught the book, in Malawi, of places, taught the book, in the situation where the dictatorship was a little reflective of what was going on in the book. Anyway, that's another story. But so why they gave birth usually in January, February, during the very coldest time when we had to dig through snow drifts that was practically as tall as I was, down to the barn to take care of them. Why we didn't keep that buck that kept knocking me down during the warmer months when I was out foolishly looking in the wrong direction, and he thought for some reason that I was a competitor. It was like, oh, no way. not for you, no. And why we didn't keep them pinned up for that time so that they would deliver for us, our convenience, warmer months did not. So down we would go to the barn. I would have to be checking on them every day, literally, and feeding them, taking care of them. And they started giving birth. And the mother, the yo, we call them ewes, many people pronounce it, would look at this lamb, their own child, like, where'd you come from? What's this all about? I guess if they looked in their mirror, they would thought, well, I'm putting a little bit of weight, right? So, but and there it was, wet, scrambling around on the ground. So I go out to the house, I get a heat lamp, and sometimes I would get a bottle of warm milk and I would test it on my wrist. And later, when my daughter was old enough for me to tell her this, she said, "That's what I did when you were born. I tested the milk, and I remember that." And she somehow didn't appreciate that. So that comparison or contrast perfectly. But so we would take care of them and begrudgingly, but feed them and make sure that they were kept inside during the winter, because in the summer they would get their heads caught in the fence, and you would count them. You had to count them every single time that you gave them water in the summertime. And if there was one missing, you had to go looking for it. And typically its head was gone through the wire fence, and you couldn't pull it back out. So by saying a few words that I had done, I won't share with you tonight. I opened the wire fence just enough to get the head pushed back out so they could go and join the other 30 some sheep. But in the winter, there they were giving birth one after the other very quickly. Multiple births were very common, so twins were fairly common, even triplets sometimes. So you would go up. I remember one particular yoke went up to the house after her first birth, got something, took it back down, probably the heat lamp, took it back down to the barn. She had a second one. Went back up to the house to get something else, came back down, and there was the third one. I said, "Stop. Stop." I remember saying this out loud to her. "No more. Stop." I wouldn't leave. And she didn't have any more. But they only had two ways of feeding their babies. So if they had triplets, we had to put one of them on the bottle. And because they didn't learn how they could rotate and make this work out. So we would get that bottle, and I would test the temperature on my wrist and take it back down and feed that particular night. And so I remember that so well, and these cold nights often remind me of those times that were. Now it's pleasant, then it was not so pleasant, but we survived, and they survived, in spite of my better intentions. Thank you very much.
I can see the bottom of the basket. That's not good. So now, where were these sheep?
Daytime.
Ooh, we got enough. Asking, ye shall receive.
All right, girl.
All right, I'm going to reach in this basket. I know. Can I tell you that there's a cash prize? People give you reasons to get up and tell a story, but we give you prizes, first, second, and third place, and everybody can use a little money for those heat bills you're gonna have later on this month. But right now, it's being clean. I'm gonna tell you.
When my firstborn son Colby was born, my medical chart described me as geriatric. 2 years later, my son Leo was born, and I didn't want to know what my medical chart had to say about me. I assumed it would be something like 1 foot in the grave. I was able to laugh off the fact that the medical community was calling me old. But a couple of months after I brought Colby home from the hospital, I was out with him somewhere, and a woman stopped to admire the baby. And then she looked at me and asked me if I was his grandmother. And that was the day I realized I am an old mom. There have been indications along the way that I am not as young as I used to be. For one thing, I use phrases like, I am not as young as I used to be. My body doesn't work the way it used to. It doesn't bend or move or lose weight like it once could. I have been blessed. For 40 years, I was blessed with perfect vision, and now my arms cannot go far enough to hold printed words at a readable distance for me. But the biggest indication that I am a woman of a certain age would be the mirror. When I look in the mirror, I sometimes ask myself, what happened? I suddenly, it seemed like one day I woke up and had all the wrinkles. And so I learned the names of all the wrinkles. And I'm able to categorize them from favorite to least favorite. So like the crow's feet, the laugh lines I love. The ones I'm called 11 lines, those are like the lines in between yes, between the eyebrows that make me look perpetually angry, which I am not, or worried, which let's face it, I probably am. Those are my least favorite. And then the gray hair. I love gray hair. I've always loved gray hair. On other people, I am finding that I do not love gray hair on me. I was under the impression that my hair would gradually and gracefully fade to gray. I was not prepared for these short, wild gray hairs sticking up all over my head at every angle. At this rate, give me 5 to 10 years and I will look like Albert Einstein. I could blame time for these changes. Instead, I choose to blame my children. They have aged me quite literally. Last night, in fact, my son Colby was preparing for his magic trick act that he plans to perform in the talent show. None of us knew this was a talent of his. And he was telling me that he could read my mind. And he told me, Mom, focus, think about your birth year. And I'm going to tell you when you were born. And so I focused on my birth year. And Colby looked at me and then he snapped and he said, I've got it. And he wrote down on a dry erase board, in all seriousness, 1900. By Colby's math, I was 116 when I gave birth to him, which is a biblical age to give birth. It's certainly geriatric. Incidentally, nowadays, I know most medical professionals prefer to use the phrase advanced maternal age when describing women like me. And I appreciate this. It makes me sound gifted and talented in a way, doesn't it? And so the next time I look in the mirror, instead of asking myself what happened, I plan to tell myself, I'm not old, I'm really advanced.
I keep telling myself that too. I had a friend, Helen, who would say there came a time that she would look in the mirror and see her own grandmother. So I'm waiting. Oh, thank you so much. Now we got plenty of time. I can still see the bottom of the basket, but I know if you're thinking of a story you want to tell, don't be shy now. Okay, I reached down, I'll pull out two. I'll just take one. Our next poet is Rhoda. Is it Israel?
As I slid onto the stool at the piano bar at Murphy, used to be at 52nd. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and I realized that I looked just as worried and uncertain as I felt. And it just come from yet another unsuccessful sales meeting. an encounter with a client that wasn't ready to buy. I was starting a new career. I was worried, how will I support my three sons on my own? How will I bring them up when I'm so busy trying to scramble for money? I was worried. And next to me, a gentleman introduced himself. He said, I'm Sam, how are you? And he started to work. Told me, wow, you come here often, the usual things that you want to say to everybody. And he was so sympathetic that I found myself telling him about my work, and telling him how uncertain I felt about my career. So I had the pinstripe suit we all tried as women to emulate the men that were in the financial services industry to look as if we were competent as they. But I didn't feel that inside, that my internal mirror wasn't working. And Sam said, you know, I'm going to be around town for a couple days. I've been traveling. And you work downtown, don't you? And I said, yes, I work for EF. And he said, you know what? I'm going to stop in and see you and say hi. Would that be okay? And I said, sure. But we didn't exchange any phone numbers. That wasn't safe, so we didn't do that. And so finally, I made my way back to my office. And I walked into the office. And there on my desk, amidst all the papers, is a single stem white rose. And there's a note that says, I just wanted this rose to see how beautiful you are. Sam. More than 40 years later, now retired from that career I was launching then, there are days when I don't like to look in the mirror. Not the real mirror, not the internal. There are too many wrinkles. There are too many regrets. Too many, I should have. I could, but I didn't. Too many things like that. When I get really to the end, and it becomes unbearable, I close my eyes, and what I see, single, long stem, pristine, bloom, white rose, but there's no Sam there. I never heard from him again to write me the note. So I have to write my own note. So I look in the mirror and I say, note to self, I just wanted you to see. I wanted this rose to see how beautiful you still are.
That was just beautiful. And I really want to know where you went. All you need to do is plant that seed. I'm here to tell you that. I'm listening to all these beautiful women who have such problems looking in the mirror. You know, I get up every morning and I look at myself and say, because if I don't think I look good, who will? Okay? It just changes your whole day. Try it. Debbie? That's all you wrote, just Debbie. I want you to have some pointers about self-esteem when you come back.
Hi, everybody. So earlier, Celestine started by talking about mirror, mirror on the wall. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that is the theme for tonight. And I have to say, I hate that story. And I think it's been had a bad influence on a lot of young girls, myself. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Who cares? Yes, it impacted me. And I remember when I was about 12 years old, standing in front of the mirror, doing a head to toe body parts evaluation. Head to toe. And the only thing that I liked of all of my body parts was my arms. They passed the test. Now, even my arms don't pass the test. Kidding. Really. Anyway, I've had a love-hate relationship with mirrors, as I think many women have. And I spent a lot of my life trying to not care about the mirror. And as I got older, I began to understand that it didn't matter. The external was not the most important thing, but of course it was the internal that mattered. And I wanted to be comfortable in my own skin. And I understood that in my relationship with people, I was being mirrored and mirroring back to people, especially with the people I love. And that taught me a lot about myself and helped me to see myself in new ways. Fast forward to just a few months ago, and I was sometimes you can have a mirror moment where somebody reflects something. And I was in a workshop, and at the end of the workshop, there was a Q&A, and we were lots of interesting questions and answers. And then one young woman, grad student group, and the one young woman put her hand up, and when I called on her, instead of asking the question, she said, "I really like how you took up so much space in the room when you were telling stories." Wow. I was not expecting that out of her mouth, but wow, what, like I don't often see myself like that. And it was such a wonderful experience to have that moment. And also to realize that that was helpful for her. It was helpful for me. And I wanted to say to her, "Do you know how long it's taking me to get to that place where I can take up a lot of space in the room when I'm telling a story?" I didn't. But I acknowledge that for myself, because it's been a long journey. And then a few weeks after that, I was sitting at, I was sitting next to a friend who was ready to move to the next round. She was dying, and she was already unconscious, but I wanted to talk to her anyway, and so I went and sat there for a while and talked, and I kind of thought she actually could hear me on some level. And I spent a long time telling her how I saw her. And like, this is what you look like to me. This is what I see when I look at you. It was actually, I mean, it's not like I planned on that or anything. It's just what happened while I was sitting next to her. It's what came to me to just share. And afterwards, I thought to myself, why don't I do that to my friends who are really anxious? Why do I wait until someone I love is in their death? And so in that moment, I decided I was going to reclaim. Now I can say, use the word, I'm going to reclaim the word mirror. It's no longer going to have any negative connotations at all. It's only going to be my effort to reflect back to people, whether I know them or not, to see the good and to reflect that back to remind people the goodness inside them. So it's mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the coolest? Who's the nicest? Who's the sweetest? Who's the most loving? That's all that matters. And so that's my goal for 2025.
That is a wonderful goal. I once had a friend tell me that, I don't know who we were talking about. I kept thinking, but things like that don't happen to me. At least I didn't pay attention to it. She said, it probably happened. I was just probably too stupid to realize that was the reaction I was supposed to have. So you can't control a lot of things that happen, but you can control your reaction to them. So it's amazing to me. I tell people I didn't find out I was fat till I was an adult. I'm sure I did, but I just took things differently. It's like, come here, let me beat you. So people talk about being bullied and teased. I was not a bully, but I didn't have that experience. So it's amazing to me to hear all these stories about horrible things that have happened to people. And I wish I could stop it from happening. But let me tell you, you just stand up honey, and act like you are it. You know what I'm saying? It. Okay. And they won't follow in line. Trust me. Trust me. Talk about this some more. At any rate, a basket, I can see the bottom of the basket. But, oh, one of my favorite people. Shannon.
Oh,
Saxon.
yeah. Thank you. It's all right. Now that I know I'm one of your favorite people. Humble brag. In 2016, I was 43 and I was one of those single women that bought her own house. That was as independent of an action as that was, you need so much help. I needed so much help. Like I didn't have a dad that was like willing to help or able, no boyfriend, husband. And I was just finding things that I didn't know what to do with. And I was decorating and I bought this little wood table, this antique table from some flea market, and I needed it refinished. And someone in the neighborhood was like, well, Gordo can redo that. And I heard of Gordo. I'd seen him walking around the neighborhood, and he was always like holding like a non-alcoholic Coors Light, and he had a ball cap on. And I thought we had met. And the first time I approached him to see if he could help me with this table, I walked up to him in the park, and I was like, Gordo, I wasn't sure if we'd met. And I was like, Gordo, right? And I was like, do you know who I am? And he was like, should I? I just, it was a really inelegant way to like have met before. I don't know why I said it like that. And that was the first and last time he was ever short with me, because he did end up refinishing that table, and he charged me next to nothing. And when he delivered it, I kind of dragged him into my house and started showing him things that needed to be done and asked him, could he help? And one of the things was this mirror that I had bought at the Woodruff Place flea market. And I remember dragging it home thinking, this is the heaviest mirror. Good God, this is a heavy mirror. And I showed him the mirror and I was like, I was planning on hanging this here. And he goes, that's a heavy mirror. What were you going to hang it with? And it was like a nail or two. And he started laughing at me. And you don't want someone laughing at you. I was like, well, can you help me? And he did. He hung it up and, he found a stud. Heard you got to find those when you're hanging up a stud. Now I know. And I didn't have a stove, and I found it and put it in. And then I had a washer dryer that I bought secondhand, and it wouldn't spin. So I went on YouTube and I tried to fix it myself, and that did not go well. I broke the foot off the damn thing. And so I had to get him to come over and help me. And he took forever. I couldn't get him to come over. And by the time he did come over, I had no clean clothes left. I was wearing what could be described as a gown. I was like, hello. And he's like, are you having a dinner party? I was like, I have no clean clothes, Gordo. I was like, you took forever to get over here. So he fixed the foot and he was laying on the ground. And like, it was hilarious because I'm trying to help him. And I'm wearing this gown and I'm stepping over him. And we're laughing about it. It wasn't creepy. I mean, he was just telling me stories about how it used to be an alcoholic. That's why I was drinking the non-alcoholic Coors Light that he always had. And he used to take motorcycle rides, and he had a wife, and then she would get mad when he took motorcycle rides because he would be gone for days, and he had heart problems, and his heart rebuilt. It was full of plastic parts, and he would tell me all this kind of stuff. So we fixed the washer, and then he just did sweet things. Like I wanted to hang this light, and he went and bought a special cord. And he just was really great. And I was like, okay, my life is set. I have Gordo. Oh, and I found out Gordo, his name was Michael Long, because one time I did write him a check, and I was like, what is your name even? And he was like, oh, it's Michael Long. And I was like, why do they call you Gordo? And he was like, I was a fat kid.
5, sorry. So anyway, Gordo, it was absolutely great to have Gordo, and then he got very ill. He had some kind of illness, and then he got a staph infection. And then because he had so many plastic parts in his heart, he couldn't clear the virus, and he ended up being very ill, and he started dying. He was only 60 years old, and they said, time is running out. So if you want to say goodbye to him, you should go now. And I did. And I went up to the hospital, and the room was just full of people who just loved Gordo. And I was able to tell him how much he meant to me, that when I had no one else, I had him. And I guess it was very close to the end because there were people that were singing to him and they were telling him, it's okay to let go, it's okay to let go. And I was whispering to him, I was like, Gordo, you're so good to me. And, when I didn't have anyone else, you just helped me so much. But do not die while I'm in this room. You and I are not that close. He didn't. He died 15 minutes after I left. And I'm telling you that story because I think Gordon would think that was hilarious. And he would, definitely. And so he died when he was 60 years old. And I miss him, but I tell you what, I see him everywhere in my house. I see him laying in the hallway laughing at me in my gown. I see him in the mirror. I see him in the stove. I just get to see him everywhere. And I'm so grateful for Gordo. We're gonna have to do a topic called fact one day. We need to talk about this stuff. I got another mirror story I gotta tell you. Giving my judges time to judge. Giving you a chance to think about a story you want to sign up for. I go to Las Vegas quite a bit. I don't want you to think I'm a high roller or anything like that, but I do have comments. But I have friends in Vegas. I have a nephew in Vegas. I have a cousin in Vegas. And my girlfriend Linda's daughter now lives in Vegas. And so she has decided that we have to go to Vegas at least 3 times a year. And so we do. Now, you see me on this walker right now. I just had knee replacement surgery. And every time I move back with this wrong knee, it's like, I don't think it's ever going to heal. But before I had the surgery, I still had problems. So I would travel and I would rent a car. I would rent a scooter. I would take my walker and I would have my cane. And no matter where you could go in Vegas, I was there. Okay. But now, this particular time, we were going back to the room. I always stay in Caesars, not trying to give them any publicity or anything. But my better comps are there. But they got a lot of properties, but they have the biggest rooms. I just want you to know that. At any rate, I could just thread a needle with this scooter. And you have an option. I call it my Bruno Mars scooter. Because remember that video he made where he had all those blue little scooters that he did. I don't know if it was for Treasure or what it was. Anyway, I was asked my Bruno Mars scooter. I learned that the $60 that the hotel charges you can be beaten by calling somebody downtown and they will deliver a scooter to you, drop it off, and you can ride around and back. So I'm cutting corners and, because I got to save the money for the slot machine. And depending on which part of the hotel, Caesars is huge. Depending on which part of the hotel you're in, depends on how it's decorated. So we ended up in this, they messed up my room. I always asked for a handicap accessible room because I have room for my scooter. Plus for the cakes that we get from Freed's Bakery. We gotta have places in the chain. Anyway, that's another story. But the last time, it was the night before we had to leave, and the doors are so heavy, you really need to have somebody hold the door for you, and you roll into the room in your scooter. And I rolled in so fast that I hit this humongous mirror that they had hanging on the wall. Now, the mirror didn't crack, not the glass. But it was, one of those huge decorative mirrors with all the flouncing around the outside of it. And I looked down and it was all this dust and ceramic stuff on the ground and these huge pieces of mirror. I'm going, I don't want this to be on my credit card. But I called right away to let them know that I had, damaged their property. And I don't know what happened, but I got disconnected. And I'd already been pissed at them for things they had done prior. So somehow I kept looking at those pieces and we picked them up, put them in the drawer in the hotel room. Then I looked and there was dust. We didn't have a vacuum cleaner. But the next day, the housekeeper cleaned and we looked and there was no dust. And you had to get down really close to see the pieces that were missing. And before I left, I just took those pieces of a mirror and put them in the trash. And I went on my way. And every day I checked my credit card to see if they had charged it. But that's my last mirror story I'm gonna tell you tonight. Unless somebody else comes to sign up, our next teller is Mary Grace. Is it Manteca? Monica.
Thank you. So growing up, I was a really nerdy, sciencey kid. I was always in my parents' basement doing experiments with lights and colors and chemistry kit. So I think it came as some surprise to my parents, my family, when in high school and college, I got really into being Catholic. I was going to youth group all the time. I was on the leadership board. In college, I got really into the Catholic Student Association, and I even became president of the Catholic Student Association out of college. And one thing about being Catholic is they have this thing called adoration, which if you're not familiar with it, it's a time when you go into the church, they have like the Eucharist, which is like communion, and you're supposed to kind of just be quiet and pray and like be with Jesus. So being the good Catholic girl that I am, I'm going to adoration. It's like a Thursday night or whatever. Their students are there, sitting there praying, and I'm sobbing. And no, I wasn't moved by the religious moment or anything. I was crying because I had fallen in love with a girl. And I knew that this was going to really mess up the life that I built for myself in college. Because I was just in trouble and I was just crying and I was there and I just didn't know what to do. And I looked down and all of a sudden, I'm kneeling there praying. I looked down and the pew in front of me is covered with a dozen small rainbows. I'm like, what is happening? Now, the thing about our chapel was there was a big skylight up in the top of the chapel, and that night there was a full moon, and the moon was shining really brightly through that window. And on one of my fingers, I had this cheap ring that I bought in like high school for like homecoming or something. And in that ring was just little pieces of glass. It looked like a fake diamond. And I'm not a physicist, but I know when you have a bunch of little pieces of glass together, there's mirrors and there's refraction. And sometimes if light hits at it just the right way, those mirrors are going to bounce off each other and create a rainbow effect. So the light was coming through, it was reflecting off my finger and making these little rainbows on the pew. So I knew the science, I knew it was mirrors, I knew it wasn't a miracle. But I still felt that God was with me that day and that I was going to be okay. And 5 years later, I did marry my beautiful wife, and there were a lot of rainbows in that room as well.
Okay.
Miss Bloomfield, my daughters loved you at Indian Creek Elementary. You were the greatest. You really were. I just sent a picture of you to them and they say hi. Have you ever driven in? I'm joking. Have you ever driven in downtown Cincinnati? Here I was in downtown Cincinnati on the interstate. And behind me were the 55 passengers of the interstate motor coach that I was driving on my first mission as a charter bus driver. And there was, I looked in the mirror and I was in the center lane I was gonna move over to the right. And then remember there's 6 mirrors on this Prevost motor coach. Look down at the lower one, there's a car right there, which I'm glad I remember to look in that mirror. But that's the way it was as a rookie, interstate motor, they call us coach operators, bus drivers. It was really interesting to learn. And along the way, I've collected a few certifications and stuff. I was a student pilot. And I got my a friend owned this bus company. And so I got my Class B CDL, which involved a lot of tests and stuff like that. And it was on this trip to Cincinnati, we were actually going to the Newport Aquarium in Kentucky. I had 55 folks from a senior living community, old folks. And when we started out, this fella walked up to me. We're putting stuff into the cargo bay, the luggage and all. And he comes over and he goes, looks around. Okay, if I bring this. And it was a paper sack, and I looked in the sack, and he had a 6-pack of beer. What, surely, okay, you can bring that, right? Well, we're driving along, and we're somewhere between Muncie and Cincinnati. And my friend who had brought the paper sack on board, he starts singing. And he had a whole repertoire, a Hank Williams medley, You're cheating hard. I can't help it if I'm still in love. People are getting agitated. Somebody says, shut up, he won't quiet down. And his wife is like getting irritated. And I see all this in my mirror, you got a mirror to look at passengers. And this guy is really agitating people. And, I don't know what to do. I'm a rookie driver. Well, I got the PA mic. I clicked the PA mic. Somebody goes, uh-oh, I told you. And the place quiets down. It's like in the movie where the sheriff walks into the bar. Everybody quiets down. I told you, somebody's yelling at him. Somebody throwing a can at him and everything. I didn't know what it says. Ladies and gentlemen, federal regulations prohibit the singing of anything on interstate motor coaches. So I have to stop that. Thank you very much.
Well, while we're waiting, anybody else got a story? All right, yay.
All right, I debated telling this, but here I am. So when I was 31, I was diagnosed with OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. And when the woman told me that, I looked at her and I said, really? Do you want to come see my house? And she immediately was like, no, not that kind of OCD. You have a different kind of OCD. It's manifesting in health anxiety, which would make sense because I just had a C-section with my oldest daughter, who you saw here earlier. And as I was lying on that table awake, and someone was literally manipulating my organs, I started realizing my mortality, which is terrifying when you are under that many drugs. But, and obviously, being the person that I am, I want to break that generational effect. I don't want that to impact my daughter. As you can see, she's a big go-getter and she's super creative and she's just a ray of light. And I want to make sure that I'm being proactive for her sake. So I started therapy. I started doing medications. I read books about my mental health. I, participate in activities that help me get some self-care in, et cetera, et cetera. But I still am a little bit nervous that I'm going to be passing on these traits to my daughter. Well, one of the things that alerted my doctor that I might have OCD is that with my health anxiety, I do kind of like body checks, which I get it. It sounds crazy. But one of the things is checking my mouth. And so for the first year or so of my daughter's life, I would have certain moments where I kind of look and mouths that are weird and fleshy, but kind of gross. And so there's always something, right? So you're always kind of like, ew, it's tongue, ew, inside your cheek. You bite the inside of your cheek, and it's like offended somehow. And so this went on. This was a nice phase of my OCD story. And one day I look over, my husband and I are sitting on the couch, and my daughter climbs up on her little chair, and before I can say, we don't stand on chairs, I notice that she's looking into the mirror at her tongue. The mirror that she had talked about earlier with her little toy, coincidentally enough. But and the first thing my husband does is give me this look like, what have you done? And I'm panicking, and I'm thinking through everything that my therapist and my psych and I have gone through, and like how to, handle this, and what would I do, or what I need if I, be the person you needed when you were younger, and recalling all the books I've read. And just before I go to do something, my daughter says, "Mommy, look, the lollipop made my tongue blue." And although I have ways away to, recover and work through my anxieties, I just want to know that was kind of a nice way to realize that I'm still looking out for my mother. Oh, well, Tracy does.
And our next teller is Tracy.
I did not plan to tell this evening because this story is not a happy one. It's a story that I came up with because someone hurt my feelings. So it's probably a crunky story as my word I call it. Now, when I was in my 40s, and I usually don't tell my age, but everybody here knows I'm at least 40, right? When I was in my 40s, I started to look around after I hurt my back. I started to look around people, family, and I came up with a phrase that I taught my children, and that was, it's the same play going on in every household, just different actors. And that became more and more true to me as time went on. Same play, different actors, maybe some variations in the play, not many. But I noticed that we reflect each other, when we look at each other, especially during the holiday season. Oh my goodness, it is so wonderful because strangers will look you in the eye and say, "Hi," for no reason. They don't have to say happy holidays or anything like that. But it's like, "Oh, I'll get that for you. It'll help you." It's so wonderful. But there are still those people that cannot look you in the eye. Their eyes go down. They have not reflected. They have not looked into it. They don't see who they really are. And somebody hurt my feelings and made me feel bad. So I thought about this story and I didn't really want to tell it. But I'll just say this. These people who have not looked in the mirror, as this young lady said, they have not looked in the mirror and realized who they truly are and what their true value is. So therefore, they look at other people in a bad way, dim light. And I feel that someone feels that way about me. And I don't know why they do, but I just feel that way. So I just want to say to everybody, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. No message could be any clearer. If you want to make a change, look in that
That's Tracy now. Listen, while we've been talking, Samantha has passed out yellow slips of paper because we are going to have a drawing. Anybody else got a story? Come on now. Come on now. Tell us your name.
John Ross,
John Ross.
5,000.
All right.
Okay.
So, talking about mirrors and reflections. So this is sometimes you can mirror and reflect the same thoughts. So I can look at you, you can look at me, and we can say, have a look, so we know what we're both thinking. Well, way back in my 20s, before the wife and the kids and the house and the career and job, overtime, I was single and alone in my single small one-bedroom apartment. And I was like, wow, I need a friend. Y'all know some of the best friends are pets. However, my 20s got a different pet. Like, hey, you know what? It's a different era of my time, kind of a guy. So, got a pet snake. Got a, they call it African Royal Ball Python. Uncle Bill's. So me and the snake became friends. So I get the snake, I get it as a baby. And the way my personality is whenever I do something, I go full steam ahead. I learn about it and educate myself about it. I don't do anything halfway. So I grab books. There was no internet back then. It was still AOL dial-up. I'm telling on myself and my age. So I grab books, a lot of magazines, learn about African royal ball pythons, how to care properly for a snake. I'm a responsible good pet owner. So I start off with a 20-gallon tank, get a baby snake, and they say what you gotta do is you gotta the heat lamp, gotta put the heating pad, give it a terrain and so forth. If you want to get a hot spot, you want to get a cold spot. Okay. How do you feed this thing? Well, when you're handling a snake, you go and when it's a baby, you feed it pinky bites that you can purchase at Uncle Bill's pet shop. So put the mice in the tank. Snake doesn't do anything. Like, this is very boring animal, but that's okay. I leave out. I come back a few hours later. The house is gone. Yeah. Okay. But then I noticed something. I go to try to grab the snake, and its head raised up. I said, "Oh, let me take a step back. Let me read about feeding. I didn't read about that in the manual yet." So they say, this is what they say for anybody who wants to get a snake, kids, anybody. It's that whenever you have a snake, an animal like that, you never feed it in its habitat. You always have a separate feeding bin that you feed it in. When you do that, you're training the snake to know that when he's in his habitat, he's safe, he's protected, and it's not feeding time. When you put it in this assigned bin, it'll learn that this is when I'm in here, this is it's time to feed, it's time to eat. Okay, we can do that. Go out, buy a bin. So it's gonna be all right. I really care for this snake. I said, you know what, I'm gonna even give this snake a name. Don't know what the snake, sex was. I was like, I'm progressive. We'll just call it, let's make it a female, we'll call it Kasha. Because I like the movie Queen of the Dam, the vampire queen. So your name is Akasha. I'm Johnny. All right, we're friends now. Put a lot of detail in the tank, put little fake plants in there and everything else. Get the separate feeding bin, put the snake in the bin. Snake never bit me, nothing like that. The snake, it was all right. After a while, after it goes from small pinky mice, then it goes to a regular live mouse. Nobody here from, gonna call the people with animals are cruelty. I'm not sure. It's the story to be alive, right? Anywho, so put the mouse in the pen, snake goes, sees the mouse. He sees the crimson one, snaps it, kills it, eats it. I'm the one they say that after about 3 mice, the snake can eat 3 mice in one feeding, then you move on to rats. So now I have rats in my house. She won't let me get a snake now. So, moving on, The snake never bit me. I used to sit back and grab the snake, pick it up, walk around with it, let it crawl around. People were like, oh wow, that's really cool. How'd you do that? Oh yeah, that's great. End up upgrading to a 55-gallon tank. Got the snake a bigger home. I'm thinking, me and the snake, we're pretty good friends. And so what people don't also know is that snakes are escape artists. And at that time, like I said, I was single for a moment. And let me try dating with my wife though. So I have a snake, but I don't tell this with anybody when I'm hanging out or when I'm dating and so forth. Snake in my house, 55-gallon tank, me and the snake are friends. Snakes are escape artists, so I had to put locks on my tank. But it doesn't matter because the snake still gets out. One day, I have a date. He comes to the house. Come on in. You ready yet? Oh no, not yet. Hold on for a minute. I'm just. Yeah. Just what you looking for? Can't find the keys? Oh, no, I got my keys here. It's my snake. No, what? My snake got out again. Again? Yeah, she does this every now and then. Whenever she wants some attention. So she's like, I'm not staying in here. So the apartment I was staying in Speedway, I'm not gonna tell you what it is or where it's at. But the way the apartments were geared is that and built is that our kitchens are connected the way they're designed. So if something comes out of if I have rats or roaches in my house, which I didn't, but if I did, if you're on the other side of me, you're gonna have it too. So after I tell the date, hey, I can't find the snake, and she's freaking out. She's like, I'll be outside. Okay. Hold on, let me go ask my neighbor. Huh? Yeah, question. Yeah. My snake is out. Is it in your apartment? Yo, what? I'm sorry. Then all of a sudden I hear a scream. No! Never mind, we found it. Closes the door, go back in, and she said, I think I seen the snake crawling in the kitchen. Makes sense. Snakes like heat, they like warmth. So the only thing in my kitchen at the time, because it was middle of summer, is that, or I'm sorry, yeah, middle of summer, had the AC on, was the refrigerator. Back at the refrigerator, it has the compressor, all the with the compressor and all the gears back there. So pull the fridge back, and sure enough, there's a snake back there coiled up. All right. But let's go, buddy. Let's go. Back in the tank you go. So snake back in the tank, thinking everything's okay. And it was. Time moves on. Some months move past. Snake gets bigger. Thinking we're friends, keeps escaping, whatever. So one day I remember myself sitting, actually laying down, taking an afternoon nap after a day's work. Laying on my couch, laid back on the sofa, and then kind of opened my eyes. And sure enough, as I opened my eyes, realized they got out again. It carefully crawled up on the couch, came down, and it looked me right above my eye with his head pulled back. Because when snakes strike, they pull their head back. And he pulled his head back. And I looked up. And, and I looked up. And at first I was nervous. I looked the snake in the eye, and the snake looked at me, and we mirrored each other's thoughts. And then I relaxed because I remember something that I read. I said, I know what you think. Yet. Snake back and turned around and went a different way. Snakes might eat anything bigger than what his mouth can hold.
We're gonna collect the yellow forms that, you just filled out for us. Oh, my goodness. You are not the only person I know who had a snake, okay? But I would not go into your apartment. And I'm with the wife, okay? Uh, I've had a glass of wine. It's really, really good. And I thank you for sharing. I want to let you know that we're collecting these yellow slips because we're going to have a drawing for free tickets. I want to remind you about here are stories of life and afterlife of incarceration in participation with the Indianapolis Foundation, Trusted Mentors, and the Garden Community Church, February 6th at 7:15 at Golden Hour Books on 50. It's at 5208 North College. That'll be very, very, have some great stories to tell. Also, don't forget about making a donation if you can. Text SAI to 44321 on your smartphone. And September 8th, we have two events. The Malaga Ship, a story of Maine and the Middle Passage, told by Antonio Pasha, will be at the Indiana Historical Society Saturday, February 8th at 7 p.m. And Freetown Village Singers will be at St. James Episcopal Church in Vincennes, Indiana on February 8th from 2 to 3. If you don't like it, you can make both events, I'm telling you now. The Freetown Village Singers will also be at Ivy Tech Community College Tuesday, February 18th from 1 to 2 p.m. They will perform in room 438. Listen, our next event will be at Union Jack Pub, 921 Broadway Avenue. And the theme for February is Déjà Vu. I don't have a Déjà Vu story. I'm gonna have to work on that, okay? Let me ask one more thing. Anybody else got a story? I want to give everybody come on.
Do I have to pick one?
Yep. Thank you.
Make you work when you come here.
Every time I've come to one of these, I've heard Celestine say that you'll sit here and someone will tell a story. You'll hear one story that reminds you of something that happened to you. That did not happen to me. I heard two stories that reminded me of things that happened to me. There was Debbie's story about the mirroring other people to themselves, and around the time of my dad's funeral, I got a letter in the mail from one of my parents' friends. It was a little bit about my remembering him, and a lot more than I expected. It was about me. And like this was somebody who was my parents' age, and we visited them sometimes. I didn't think she knew me all that well. This was a letter like full of those kinds of things that I might like secretly wish for people to notice about me and would never talk about, and had no idea that anyone, like some adult friend of my parents, would have noticed. And that was just such a nice thing to receive. And then about 20 years earlier than that, I had been sitting in a restaurant having a conversation with a friend, sitting in this restaurant in Mexican town in Detroit. And I think my friend started noticing that I didn't seem as focused on what she was saying as I had been a moment before. And she sort of asked about that. I'm like, well, there's this rainbow. And she's like, where's the rainbow? So I pick up a paper napkin and like hold it there. So the rainbow shows up on it.
in the middle of the table. Then she slides over on the other side of the booth so that she can sit right in the rainbow and smile, and there's this rainbow there. And we had to figure out how that was happening and like walked through the restaurant holding the napkin, following where the rainbow was coming from. The sun was reflecting off the highly polished waxed hood of a car parked on Bagley Avenue in front, coming through the beveled glass window of the front door, reflecting off a mirror behind where the host sits, coming through some beadwork on a partition between different sections of the restaurant and ending up as a rainbow at our table. That's unfortunately all I.
Chair. Okay, Samantha's got some news. Free tickets to any of our next events, and it is Ann, SMOZK. Well, listen, I had a great time. Happy New Year. Hope to see you again in February at Union Jack. And the topic is deja vu. You know, I can tell you a deja vu story now. Once when I had, I think I had a hip replacement then. And of course, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't drive. I couldn't go in the kitchen if I could. So I wasn't eating anything. And unconsciously, I lost like maybe 60 pounds. Don't worry, I found them later. And I was walking out of the hospital after some x-rays, and I heard this on the ground. And I stopped, and I looked down, and I used to have a ring that I wore on my thumb, and I had lost enough weight for that ring to fall off my finger. And I heard it, and I picked it up. I later pawned it, but at any rate, I just lost my ring here tonight, and I haven't weighed in a minute, but I really ain't been trying not to eat, because you know, food is very, very important to me. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to have our winners, and we want you to come up, and we are going to take your picture, and we're going to give you your prize. Our third place winner is Rhoda. Jen. Camera. Congratulations. Everybody, thanks for coming. And I'm going to eat my cold french fries.
Thank you. Oh. I'm always biased.